Numerous reports indicate that manufacturing has emerged as the favorite target of ransomware groups and hackers. In response, a new report from Industrial Media discusses the evolution of industrial cybersecurity, its current state, and the tactics hackers are using, including phishing schemes, malware, and ransomware attacks. It also details solutions in arming manufacturers with the knowledge and resources needed to win more fights on this highly complex and ultra-competitive battlefield. Download the industrial sector's new battlefield by going to manufacturing.net/cyber. Hi, I'm Jeff Franke, Editorial Director of Manufacturing.net and Manufacturing Business Technology. Welcome to Security Breach. As we near our 100th episode of Security Breach, I thought it might be a good time to take a look back at some of our guest predictions from the previous 12 months. If you want to check out the full episodes from any of these previous guests, you can find them in the show archives or by clicking through to our website. So join me now as we look at our first collection of responses from Pete Lund at OpSWAT, John Dwyer from IBM, Siemens Kimberly Cornwell, and Monty Caneas from Nanolock, as they provide insight on what they feel will be the most significant trends impacting industrial cybersecurity over the next 12 to 18 months.
So certainly two. The first is folks have a very strong need to move beyond visibility. They're like, we've got it. We see all our things. We see the bad things happening. What can I do to safely, limit what can happen when my hard exterior is ultimately breached? How do I stop them from, doing that lateral movement or that next step? So we're seeing lots of customers get serious about actual protective controls. Everyone feels good about visibility, but needs to move on. The second thing is supply chain. So the big trend now is things like SBOM and supply chain analysis, making sure either the hardware you're receiving or the software you're receiving is genuine. This kind of comes out of the SolarWinds incident where software that was ultimately not genuine was able to do quite a bit of compromise and damage. So those are kind of the two main focuses. And then as things like cloud and other overarching technologies kind of creep in, it's great to see those devices because they do have security built in from scratch. Think of it almost like your home thermostat. It's now got smarts, it's got a password, it's got a secure connection back to the cloud. But we see folks kind of retrofitting things to the cloud, maybe without some of that security, and they need to kind of think of that.
We are what I've been calling an inflection point for ransomware right now. And this is the first time we've had data points in which we've seen a marked improvement by organizations' ability to detect and respond to it. And so I'm interested to see what path we take going forward, right? So do we take this W and we get better? We say, well, okay, we've done a little bit better. How do we continue this momentum to then layer improved defenses further on in detection and response and reduce our attack surface, yada, yada, yada? Or do we say, oh, we got this buttoned up because we bought the fancy whiz-bang tool and that tool is doing a really good job at detecting the implant, and so we're good. Like we have that problem solved and we're not going to re-architect our networks. And if we go down that path, then I'm interested to see if that, today's backdoor problem becomes tomorrow's ransomware problem, where the, adversaries just figure out how to bypass that and they're off to the races again, because that is a trend that we are observing, right? So there's going to be there's more attention to EDR bypass technologies, those marketplaces in terms of like, how do you get around next-gen AV or EDR, whatever that endpoint tooling that is facilitating that detection? How do you get by that, right? And so if we get by that, what that says to me is that the attackers think that if they can get by that initial detection, they think they're going to be successful again. And so we need to be aware of that to make sure that that's not the case, right? And I think the next area where things are going to next, I think we're going to see more migration into business or criminal operations that are feeding that ransomware ecosystem. So more backdoors for sale. So there's going to be more incentive for people to gain access. So that access broker marketplace is going to expand. There's going to be more people doing credential harvesting so they can get in through things like VPNs and remote desktop and all those kind of things. You're going to see that marketplace expand. because the risk reward is nice. Like, you are incentivized to get in as much as you can, and then you're just selling access off to someone else to do the ransomware, right? And so I think that those three things are what I'm really paying attention to in 2023.
I do think artificial intelligence, machine learning, a lot of data being produced right now. A lot of tools, Chat GPT, you're seeing people program their PLCs with that now, and doing, talking to their HMI and doing all sorts of language learning. And I mean, some of it's very exciting, some of it's just kind of novelty stuff. We'll see how it goes. But I do think data is going to be our new currency. And so, it's going to be interesting to see how we go forward with it. But a lot of data is leaving the plant floor. A lot of data that used to be really tightly held, Bush's baked beans, their secret recipe. Not I don't work with Bush's baked beans, but their secret recipe could be out in the cloud right now.
Sure.
So, those types of things. So it's going to be interesting. It's exciting times. I think manufacturing is much more tech forward than it's been, which is great, but also a little scary because we're not even doing the good cybersecurity at what they have right now. So now opening this Pandora's box of new tools, which are much more exposed, not necessarily, but can be much more exposed. And if they haven't been used to thinking about the cybersecurity implementations, my fear is that they're rushed to implement some of this stuff. They're going to, be like, oh, we'll go back and we'll take care of the security at a different time. We'll make our certificates good for 20 years, and, things like that. So that's kind of where I get a bit concerned, excited, really excited for where manufacturing is going. I think there's a lot of good coming out, but would like us to get some of the fundamentals of good cybersecurity at the base level, at the plant floor right now, before we start going, oh, yay, here we go. But it's what keeps us all employed, I guess.
No. AI, and AI.
Yeah.
So the pace of AI is going crazy. I'm a big fan of AI. I try to read and everything that is possible. I talked about deep fake of voice that is there, deep fake of faces. It will go crazy. So nothing is stopping adversaries from attacking. There's no regulation. People are not standing in very long lines to get cybersecurity products, because they usually wake up only after they hear of a friend of theirs that's got attacked. So ransomware is helping us into getting more awareness to the need of cybersecurity. I hope that wise people won't wait, for their time, because what will happen is they will lose time, production, maybe pay the ransom, and then realize that the fact that they paid a ransom doesn't say that they solved the problem, because it's even worse. Now there's an adversary that knows that there are suckers who paid ransom, and therefore it's good to go back to them every now and then. So if you have to get cybersecurity, but you do that from paying a ransom, going, paying downtime, hurting your reputation, because you can't supply what it is that you're supposed to supply, have financial problems like paying the ransom, and then getting cybersecurity, start from the cybersecurity, but make sure that you don't buy anything. So as I said, I'm a true fan of risk assessment. Get into your system, look at it, see what are the core values or the core assets that you need, and then make sure that you get something that will help you with worse. So what I see is more cyber attacks. I see a truly upgrade in manipulating abilities because of AI, but it will just go up because nothing is stopping them. So 12 to 18 months, it will get worse.
AI, cloud, and more. Predictions that seemingly hit the mark. Let's hear some more from Nova Coast Elise Mena Brown, Brian Hogley from Side Channel, Huxley Barbie from Run Zero, and Four Scouts Daniel Trivolato.
The supply chain conversation's totally going to expand, or we wouldn't be talking for sure. But I do expect the methodologies used there to continue. I think that's something we also see in fraud, where we can't even sometimes imagine all the different ways that somebody might weaponize a piece of data. That happens now, but a lot of what we see traditionally as practitioners is something that's cybercrime, organized crime. It's financially motivated, right? I do expect, especially considering geopolitical landscape, that unfortunately, I don't want to be a fear monger here, but that we will see more of these conversations where certain types of data, schematic, something that provides that competitive advantage is being stolen and either handed off to more nefarious cases. Not that I'm trying to give attackers ideas either, but I expect that. I think other pieces we're going to see is more leveraging attacks against business partners to get to a certain organization.
Yeah.
So we've seen that with, for example, like Chinese affiliated groups. They go after MSSPs because if you can get onto the SOC analyst, even if it's outsourced, SOC analyst machine while they're logging into the person you're really trying to attack, that can be a vector that goes in, and you're going to already be in the environment by the time anyone has any idea something happened.
Yeah.
So I do kind of expect that those things, like if you steal a contract from one place, okay, now you know that they do $20 million of business with so-and-so. All right, we're going to go spoof so-and-so and kind of try to get back in, or, those kinds of things where it's just cross-pollinating from breach to breach to breach. And I think, unfortunately, like the software dependency problem, that kind of balloons out, right? So I think getting ahead of it now is really what organizations need to be focused on, honestly.
No, I agree. And you're not fear mongering. I think the more we talk about these issues and these problems and potential avenues of attack and some of the different organizations that are out there that are so much more organized, so much more complex, the better solutions we can come up with. And a lot of that fear now just becomes more of a checklist of things that we need to do to be prepare and continue to operate safely or as securely as we possibly can. So I think the conversation's good. No,
I think you touched on an interesting point. There should be a cybersecurity person involved in that procurement process. It's not something we've traditionally had to do, unfortunately, but I think going through those and having a checklist or questionnaire, what kind of access are you going to have? What kinds of software updates are we going to have, or at least until when will we have them? Knowing that stuff in advance is so important because you're going to be locked into that piece of equipment for 5 to 20 years, depending on what the equipment is. So you want to make sure at that procurement phase, and then also making those things enforceable. So that's where the attorneys become our friends again, is, okay, vendor, you said that you're going to update Java and, Apache and whatever it is on this appliance that we're relying on you for, this big thing we bought. And if you don't, we're taking you to court. And unfortunately, that's a little punitive, but I think that if it's kind of that self-policing problem, if vendors aren't going to commit to helping their clients stay secure because they're just doing a one and done sale of a piece of equipment and they're on to the next place, I think that it's making the problem worse. More and more of these pieces of IoT and OT are out there with just crap code on them, or that haven't been patched in a decade, and they're still not getting patched. We still come across Windows XP in 2003 regularly in the manufacturing and oil spaces. So that makes it really difficult.
I think the push and the view on identity is going to be it, right? I think, from a sector by sector standpoint, there's been so much of a push on the endpoint, and that's great. I'm not saying it's a swing to do this and not that. It's now you also have to do this. Yeah. So really focusing on that identity is going to be huge. And then that supply chain. I mean, the extension and continued use, that is going to be a growing area. And then I think, kind of farther out, there's going to be this big pendulum swing back on the cloud service providers. I think there's going to be a real push either by them themselves. They're going to wake up and they've got to acknowledge this themselves, that they kind of keep getting blamed or expected to be doing certain things for people. Like, oh, I've heard this from plenty of folks. Like, hey, I thought AWS was doing that for me. Like, no. I think eventually AWS is going to do that for you. Right? Like eventually the CSPs are just going to step in and be like, you know what? None of you can seem to do this well. So we're going to do this for all of you now. Right. And now, boom, here's that security. And it's on by default. Right. There's just going to be this more and more of a push, because I think the CSPs are going to, if they keep dealing with this kind of blowback on cloud insecurity, kind of that view, which I don't think is true. It's people just incorrectly using it.
Yep.
They're going to kind of use it as too much noise and just say, how much does it cost to just make this just shut up and just do this for everyone and just shut it down? And I think there's going to be a real push inside of that space. Maybe that's super wishful thinking. I really want that to happen, because I think they're in a very, very good position to see that data and be able to actually make the right changes across the board to make this impactful. And that's just going to raise the bar for everybody. Right. So I think those three areas, right? Identity, supply chain, and CSPs taking a little bit more ownership on security for their clients and their clients' clients.
Cybersecurity insurance premiums have gone up in the last year, right? Significantly. So what does that mean for industrial control system environments, right? If we look at the risk management matrix, right, there's risk avoidance, risk acceptance, risk transfer, and risk mitigation. And insurance is a risk transfer treatment of risk. If the insurance premiums go up, what would be the treatment that would be adopted by organizations who can no longer afford those premiums? Do they go to risk mitigation, meaning they're adding more controls or buying more tools? Or do they go with risk acceptance or risk avoidance? Probably not avoidance, because they don't want to shut down, right? Availability is very important. So it might be just risk acceptance at that point, which is probably not the best solution or best outcome for just society in general. Like we don't want to just put our heads into the sand like ostriches and say, yeah, it's going to be fine. So, what is the impact of cybersecurity insurance on ICS environments since premiums have gone up? I don't know what the outcome is going to be, but I'm very interested to see what that's going to look like, particularly with manufacturers.
Yeah. Well, you would hope potentially, taking a glass half full type of perspective, maybe this is another thing that when it gets talked about in the boardroom, it reinforces the need for investment in cybersecurity on the OT side of things. And I guess I'm hopeful that as we're investing more money into that, there comes a training element that's involved in really identifying and kind of advancing OT security specialists, because I think that's the biggest thing that we need right now in manufacturing.
In terms of trends, I can mention three trends we are either seeing or starting to monitor. The first one is we're starting some projects. At the moment, it's non-production projects, but interesting research and development projects with some partners and prospects and customers on 5G. They're starting to adopt and make use of or plan to make use of 5G in some of their core services, and we are trying to work with them on how basically this impacts security for them, right? The second trend I'm seeing is that there was a couple of years ago the boom of keyword visibility, right? And now there is a bit of the keyword would be what next, right? So there is two areas in which we are seeing organization going. Is the first one is what do I do after I get visibility, right? So the organizations that basically chose OT cybersecurity solutions that are just providing the visibility are now coming back and say, maybe I need something bigger, broader, that not only gives me this visibility, but also allows me to take action. And the second is, what do I do with the myriad of information that these solutions, any cybersecurity solution generates, right? It's too much. Like even for my SIEM, it's too much, right? So that's why, the investments we made as Forescout that I mentioned earlier, that the ability to take action based on what you see, and this, XDR-like correlation engine that basically feeds back to the SIEM to reduce the noise are something that we're getting a high request for. And the third one is to some extent linked to the second. Organizations are starting to have too many security solutions, so they're starting to rationalize and think how they can consolidate these vendors. So can I get a single vendor that does more, for example? Can I get, instead of an IoT security, OT security, and IT security or IT visibility solution, can I get a single one that does all of them, right? Can I use this solution also to automate some of my workflows? So it's a lot about efficiency, dealing with this broader, more interconnected world, as well as to the efficiencies that the shortage and sheer amount of data we are dealing with today generates, basically.
Now let's wrap up with comments from Drago's Dawn Capelli and a couple of my personal favorites, Impero's Matthew Wolf, KnowBe4's Eric Cron, and Tony Pietrocola from Agile Blue.
For years, like since 9/11, I think we've been talking about what constitutes an act of war, from a cyber perspective. If someone would dare to attack power, what is the response, and what is the national policy and how we deal with that? Well, now it's happening. And now that it's happened more and more with the Ukraine-Russia war, I think it's the Pandora's box has been opened. It's happening now. And so I think that we have to realize that, like our water authorities, our power, the chances of them being hit have raised substantially. Just the sophistication of the malware out there targeting industrial control systems escalated dramatically in 2022. So I think we just have to be aware that the risk is much higher than it has been in the past. And so we can't wait. We have to be prepared. And it's for the whole ecosystem, not just the big guys.
Yeah.
So in 2024, I think, in my perspective, I really think social engineering is going to keep on climbing. And here's my perspective on it. So we had COVID, a lot of crazy things happened. Everyone went remote. And there was this huge social deprivation that occurred. And then now we're coming out of COVID a couple of years later, and now we're getting back into the normal stage of like, what is social interaction? Well, now everyone is mad at each other. And so now we're go back into looking for things elsewhere. So again, there's so much psychology when it comes to the hacking world that for me, I think social engineering is going to keep growing, because I think people are going to start being susceptible to it again. And I don't want to say like the Nigerian prince, his money's locked up, so I'm going to send him money. But I mean, there's going to be healthy organizations that get exploited, and that they're going to be used as a tool to get into other organizations. And that's where I see the uptick is coming, is really in the social engineering aspect. And then after the social engineering aspect, again, that just gets you in the door to do actions on objective. But after that, I think ransomware is going to be what's going to be detonated. Yeah, which I've actually had experience doing, and I've actually deployed ransomware, not on a good person's network. So, but I've actually detonated ransomware, designed my own ransomware. So, and it's easier to do than we realize.
No, agree with you on both fronts. I mean, when you look at the social engineering perspective, with how much more manufacturers are working with cloud applications, and how, again, doing back to the social engineering, it can be so easy to just garner bits and pieces of information that can help them put together a profile to get access to some of those cloud apps. And that's how we've seen a lot of systems get infiltrated. You talked about the DDoS attacks. Those are rising. Ransomware's off the charts. It continues to be a huge issue. So,
because it's so easy. I mean, it's so easy to do, and that's why it's going to continue to be easy to do.
Tears, not of joy. No, it is. It's frustrating. And I see that a lot where organizations are just frustrated. They're like, what do I do? And some of them are like, hey, if Boeing can't protect themselves, what chance do I have? Right. I'm a 300 employee shop. Well, okay. That's not always the case. You want to make it tough on them, so they'll go to an easier prey. There's so many other places they can go right now. It's kind of one of those, I don't have to beat the bear. I just have to beat the guy next to me, as you're running from it. It's the same sort. And I hate to put it that way, but you need to harden your stuff so that it's more work than it's worth to get in.
Yeah.
And you need to watch that. But what's happening is we're seeing this trend of AI now has absolutely exploded. And the reason that really matters is not only do we have ransomware as a service or other malware as a service and service type things going on that are allowing massive amounts of scaling. Now you take something like AI, which can generate emails that don't have grammar errors, that don't have spelling errors, that don't have those tells that we oftentimes tell people to look for. Those days are pretty much gone, right? So they're creating those at scale easily. And my big concern is if they're not already doing it, which I can't prove one way or another, but all of these data breaches that we hear about that have this personal information, right? All of this information is out there on, let's say me. I was part of the Target breach, the Home Depot breach, the OPM breach, every breach I can think of, unfortunately, I get the notification of. Well, if somebody combines all that stuff, they have an incredible profile of me as a person. Using AI to parse that and goes, oh, well, here's the interests of this person. These are the things the person is passionate about. You find the emotional passion for people. It could be politics. It could be saving puppies, whatever it is. AI could then generate the attacks and use those to leverage against the individuals. I see that as being where we're going to go with a lot of this AI stuff. And I think that's one of the bigger issues we're going to have within organizations, within industries moving forward 10 or 12 years. And if we don't teach people who are going to be the targets of those, how to spot them and how to understand the things that are going on there, we're going to be in a lot of trouble. And truth is, spotting something like that is honestly no different than what we're doing now. And it comes back to, I always tell people, if you have an emotional response, strong emotional response to a text message, phone call, or email, take a deep breath and start looking at it. Did it come in at 3:00 in the morning and it's supposed to be our CEO and that was on Saturday? Wait a minute, that's not right. Those sorts of things are still going to be there, but they're going to be able to get us more emotionally charged more quickly, so we overlook it.
No.
I think a trend that I've seen started over the last couple of months, and I don't think this is going anywhere. Companies, so people that work at companies are plugging PII, they're plugging IP, they're plugging patient information, they're plugging confidential company information into GPTs like Chat GPT, like Bard, other ones as well. And they're not doing it because they're malicious. They're looking to see where that can help them with business. And they're putting so much confidential information in. Well, when it goes in, it can also come out. And if it goes in constructed, it can come out deconstructed to do the opposite. And we've seen actual customers doing this and saying, what do we do now? And you can't call ChatGPT and be like, hey, I need my information out. That ain't gonna work. That thing's in the model now. So we're seeing a lot of that. And I do think that could present backdoor problems going into 2024. I hope it doesn't, but come on, how can it not? That's a trend we're seeing a lot of. So can you keep people from going to ChatGPT? No, and you shouldn't. They should use it responsibly, but you can't plug confidential IP or patient information, which we've seen, or your earnings results like Samsung did before going public. And that stuff is now part of that model.
So, does that this leads to a bigger question, I guess, beyond just cybersecurity, but is that going to be maybe not the downfall, not being that dramatic, but definitely limitations placed on open source AI when it comes to these language models? Is that kind of where we're trending?
I mean, it could. I can tell you this, personally, we're using some Anthropic Claude models, LLMs, in some of the things we're running. And you're right. One of the reasons maybe we chose that over some other ones is because of that, because we do want to analyze some of the data we have, and you can't trust it from a public perspective. Now, the tools are so vast, the compute shared, but you got to know what you're sharing. Otherwise, it could really put the organization in a tough way. And by the way, how many organizations as of right now do you think have AI or chat GPT policy? I'd have to assume basically none.
Yeah.
But that's something you're going to start seeing, because that risk needs to be mitigated as well.
Thanks for joining us today. And to catch up on past episodes, you can go to manufacturing.net, IEN.com, or mbtmag.com. You can also check Security Breach out wherever you get your podcasts, including Apple, Amazon, and Overcast. And if you have a cybersecurity story or topic that you'd like to have us explore in Security Breach, you can reach me at jeff@ien.com. I'm Jeff Ranke, and this is Security Breach.